What happened in the late 19th century was Teddy Roosevelt and others looked out to the west and they said, hey, nobody's out there yet really using these lands. Let's start fencing them off and preserving them and keeping people off of them. And that was to our detriment, obviously, because we're here and my family was here and a lot of people's families were here, and we had to pay the price for that. So now we have a situation where even though virtually every state was 80–90% federal land at one time, states east of Colorado are on average about 5% federally owned. Colorado and west, including New Mexico, are on average about 50% federally owned now, and so that's 50% of our tax base that's gone. That's 50% of the lands that we don't have the ability to responsibly use to have good jobs, to take care of our families and communities. It's a matter of fairness. Nebraska also once was owned by all Americans, and now it's 3% owned by the federal government by all Americans. Montana and North Dakota came in under the same, they became states at the same time with the same piece of paper, the same agreement. North Dakota is about 3.5% federal lands, Montana is about 30%. A promise has been broken. Yes, they are owned by the federal government, but the federal government broke a promise by holding on to those lands rather than allowing the citizens of those states to use them and conserve them responsibly. Well, what we'd like to see is multiple use lands turned over to state control. So we're not talking about national parks, even new monument areas if they were properly designated, wilderness areas, certainly military reservations and things like tribal lands. Those aren't part of this. They're not part of what we're asking for. We're asking for those lands that when they came into the federal estate, way back when, they were designated for more than one use, for economic uses, for aesthetic, recreational uses, whatever their best use was or combination. In Nevada, as part of this process that they're working on, they compared the net costs and revenues of BLM land in the state with state-owned lands and the net costs and revenues. And what they came up with was BLM land was managed at about a 91-cent per acre loss. State-managed lands were managed at about a $28.50 gain. So that's an enormous difference per acre when you're talking about millions, literally millions of acres.
Did the Clive and Bundy thing, was it a net gain for your side or a net loss?
I think it was kind of a wash for our side. It certainly raised the visibility of the issue, and he was right on the issue of the federal government increasingly encroaching upon traditional rights on those lands. He was absolutely right. Now, was he the best spokesperson? No. And he broke the law. He engaged in civil disobedience, and he broke the law, and so you have to acknowledge that. But his is just one very relatively small case on what I call the list of horribles of the federal government stepping in and denying people their traditional rights and traditional uses, not just legal rights, but also traditional recreational uses and economic uses of lands. A lot of federal lands, really, their best use is to be put to use for an economic use and to support families and communities. So nobody's talking about privatizing the land that I know of, nobody's serious. Nobody's talking about poking holes in Carlsbad Cavern or someplace like that. We're talking about taking lands whose best use is, in many cases, economic, and it's certainly complementary with conservation for the long haul. Those are the lands we're looking at, and that's what we should be concentrating on.
Carl Graham, thank you for your time.
Thank you.